Respect isn't lost in a screaming match. It's not lost when you make some big public mistake. You think respect disappears loudly, but it almost never happens that way. The truth is, respect is usually lost in moments you never notice while they're happening. It evaporates in a quiet gesture, a slight hesitation, a needy question you thought was simply being polite. No one tells you it's happening. They won't confront you. They just adjust. They'll start talking over you. They'll value your opinion a little less. They'll pull away, slowly. By the time you feel it, the shift is already done. And you can't point to one reason, because it wasn't one reason. It was 1,000 tiny signals you were sending without realizing it. Here's the strange part. None of those signals actually destroy respect on their own. They're symptoms of something deeper, a hidden habit that quietly changes how people experience you long before they consciously form an opinion. We'll come back to that. But first, you have to learn to recognize the symptoms. These aren't flaws in your personality. They're communication errors. And once you can see them, you stop leaking respect without even knowing it. The first reason, the compulsion to over-explain. The first way you bleed respect is by over-explaining. You say no, and then immediately follow it with a 5-minute monologue justifying why, as if your boundary needs a cosigner. You make a decision, and then feel this need to walk everyone through your entire thought process, hoping you'll get their approval. You think you're being transparent, but what you're signaling is anxiety. You're communicating, I don't trust my decision unless you agree with it. The more you explain, the more you unintentionally invite people to examine whether your decision deserves approval in the first place. What you meant as clarity starts sounding like a defense. Think about work. A manager says, "We're moving the deadline to Friday." The low-status response is to immediately start justifying, "I know this is sudden, but we got new data, finance is putting on pressure, and I really hope this is okay with everyone." Notice what happened. The deadline didn't become weaker because it changed. It became weaker because the speaker acted as though the decision needed permission to exist. The alternative isn't to become cold or authoritarian. It's to be concise. State the decision. Then pause. We're shifting the deadline to Friday. That silence that follows is uncomfortable for people who seek approval, but that's exactly why it carries weight. If people have questions, they'll ask. If clarification is necessary, give it. But don't rush to defend a decision that you already believe is the right one. The Stoics understood something modern conversations often forget. Confidence isn't measured by how much you say. It's measured by how little you need to defend yourself. High-respect people explain when necessary, not compulsively. Before we move on, notice something. Over-explaining isn't really about talking too much. It's about quietly asking another person to validate your judgment. And once you see that pattern, you'll start noticing it hiding in places that have nothing to do with words. Reason number 2, the upward inflection. The second signal is the upward inflection, making your statements sound like questions. It's one of the most subtle ways to give away your authority. You know what you want to say, but your tone rises at the end, like you're asking for permission to have an opinion. "I think we should use the blue design. My name is John. The meeting is at 3. Most people think this is just a speaking habit. It isn't. It's often the voice doing the same thing your over-explaining did, looking for reassurance before committing to your own words. It signals a quiet lack of self-trust. You're presenting your own thoughts as tentative, like they need the listener's approval to become real. Their brain doesn't consciously analyze this. It simply registers uncertainty. They don't hear collaborative. They hear unsure. Imagine you're at a party. Someone asks what you do. You answer, "I'm a graphic designer." That tiny rise at the end turns a fact into an audition. Instead of communicating identity, you're inviting evaluation. The fix is simple, but it takes practice. End your statements with a downward inflection. Make your statements sound like statements. Record yourself speaking for 1 minute. Listen for every place your voice rises when it doesn't need to. You're aiming for calm finality, not dominance. There's a difference. One comes from certainty. The other comes from trying to overpower people. Stoicism asks for the first, never the second. And notice something interesting. You haven't changed your opinion. You've only changed how confidently you deliver it. Yet people often respond as if the opinion itself became stronger. That should make you ask a bigger question. If these tiny behaviors can change how people see us, what are they actually responding to? The third reason, the compulsion to fill silence. The third behavior is the nervous need to fill every silence. The conversation hits a natural pause, and you immediately jump in with chatter or a joke or another question. You can't stand the void. To you, silence feels awkward, a problem that needs to be fixed. But here's the contradiction. Most people think confidence is demonstrated by saying the right thing. In reality, confidence is often demonstrated by not needing to say anything at all. That's why silence unnerves people who rely on approval. A pause removes their ability to earn reassurance through words. You're on a date, or in an interview. You answer a question. Instead of letting your answer land, you immediately add, "But yeah, I don't know. That's just me." Or rush into another question before they've even processed what you said. You aren't extending the conversation. You're rescuing yourself from uncertainty. The silence wasn't the problem. Your discomfort with the silence was. This is where all the previous behaviors suddenly connect. Over-explaining, turning statements into questions, filling every pause. They look completely different, but they're all solving the same emotional problem. Their attempts to avoid the discomfort of not being immediately validated. That's the hidden habit we left unanswered at the beginning. The behaviors aren't what people lose respect for. People lose respect because they sense someone who doesn't fully trust their own judgment. The behaviors are simply the evidence. Once you understand that, every section before this changes meaning. The fix isn't just to stay quiet. It's to see silence as a tool instead of a threat. It gives your words weight. It gives other people room to think. It often encourages them to reveal more than they intended. The next time a pause happens, don't rush to escape it. Breathe, hold eye contact, wait. The person who is least comfortable with the silence will usually be the first to break it. And in that moment, you're no longer performing for approval. You're demonstrating that your presence doesn't depend on constant reassurance. Everything from this point forward becomes easier to recognize because now you're no longer looking at behaviors. You're looking at the mindset that creates them. The fourth reason, the obligation smile and performed warmth. The fourth gesture is what I call performed warmth. It's that reflexive, forced smile when you're uncomfortable. It's the immediate agreeableness you put on to avoid any hint of conflict. It's not genuine kindness. It's a fear of rejection disguised as being nice. This is people-pleasing. Now that you've seen the hidden pattern, this behavior looks different. You aren't smiling because you're kind. You're smiling because you're trying to prevent someone else from withdrawing their approval. That's why people instinctively feel the difference. One smile comes from confidence. The other comes from dependence. You think you're keeping the peace, but you're really signaling, my comfort is less important than making sure you're comfortable. Over time, that message teaches people exactly where your boundaries are, and more importantly, where they aren't. We don't respect what we can easily control. A person who is always agreeable is often easy to influence. When you always say yes, always apologize, always smooth things over, people may appreciate your convenience, but respect rarely grows from convenience. It grows from consistency. A coworker makes a joke at your expense. Instead of letting your face show that it didn't land, you flash an obligation smile. You laugh along. In that moment, you haven't protected the relationship. You've trained the relationship. You've shown that avoiding tension matters more to you than protecting your own boundaries. And people often repeat the behaviors that receive no resistance. The fix is to stop managing everyone else's emotional experience. This doesn't mean becoming rude or cold. Stoicism has never been about emotional distance. It's about emotional discipline. Replace performed warmth with genuine civility. If a joke isn't funny, you don't have to smile. If you disagree, you don't have to apologize before speaking. If something crosses a boundary, you don't have to pretend it didn't happen. A calm, neutral response often communicates more self-respect than forced friendliness ever could. The goal isn't to become less kind, it's to make your kindness a choice instead of a survival strategy. Reason number 5, the premature apology. The fifth behavior is the premature apology, apologizing for things that don't require an apology. You say sorry for asking a question. You say sorry for having an opinion. You say sorry when someone bumps into you. It's a verbal habit that quietly shrinks your presence before anyone else has the chance to. Sorry, just a quick question. Sorry to bother you. Sorry, but I think... Listen carefully to what those words communicate beneath the surface. They don't simply apologize for an action. They apologize for taking up space. That's why premature apologies slowly reshape how people see you. If you consistently treat your own needs like inconveniences, people eventually start treating them the same way. Replace sorry to bother you with, is now a good time? Replace sorry for the question by simply asking it. Replace sorry I disagree with, I see it differently. The words are different, but the deeper change isn't language, it's identity. You're acting as someone who believes they have a right to speak before anyone else gives permission. For one day, notice every unnecessary apology. Ask yourself one question. Did I actually do something wrong, or was I simply afraid of inconveniencing someone? Most of the time, the answer won't be guilt. It will be approval seeking, and once you can recognize that difference, These habits become much harder to repeat. Over-explaining, turning statements into questions, filling every silence, performing warmth, apologizing for your own existence. At first, they looked like 5 separate habits. Now you can see they were never separate. They were all different expressions of the same hidden belief. I need your approval before I can trust myself. That's why simply fixing one habit rarely lasts. Stop over-explaining, and you'll start apologizing. Stop apologizing, and you'll begin filling silence. The behavior changes. The dependence stays the same. This is the lesson the Stoics understood long before modern psychology gave it a name. No amount of external approval can create internal certainty. It only teaches you to need the next approval even more. Real confidence isn't loud. It isn't dominating conversations. It isn't pretending not to care what anyone thinks. It's much quieter than that. It's the calm decision to trust your own judgment before asking anyone else to trust it. The moment you stop outsourcing your self-worth, every one of these behaviors begins to disappear naturally. Not because you're following social techniques, because you've removed the reason they existed in the first place. And here's the irony. The people who command the most respect usually aren't trying to command respect at all. They're simply no longer negotiating with themselves. That quiet certainty changes the way they speak, the way they listen, the way they set boundaries, the way they carry silence. And without saying a word about confidence, other people begin to feel it. So this week, don't try to fix 5 habits. Watch for one thing instead. Every time you're about to over-explain, every time you're about to apologize, every time you're about to fill an uncomfortable silence, ask yourself one question. Am I expressing confidence, or am I asking for permission? Because that single question reaches deeper than every technique in this video. And once you can answer it honestly, respect stops being something you chase. It becomes something your behavior naturally reflects.